Actually, you are the future because you're, unemployed. Right?
I'm in between jobs.
Yeah. So this panel is about how Bill and Chris killed off tips and tricks, and it's also about representing. And actually, I don't know how many of you guys know. Okay, so I'm also supposed to be moderating and introducing here, so excuse me. I'm Chris Kohler. I do the games blog for Wired Magazine. Over here is Bill Kunkel, who is one of the first video game journalists, one of the founding editors of Electronic Games, and more importantly, as far as things you can buy here at the show, author of Confessions of the Game Doctor, a book that does not stand on its own power, but is otherwise excellent, and you can purchase it from Len Herman's Roulette Press booth in the main Expo Center. Yeah, couldn't spring for hardcover, could you like? Chris Bieniek, up until recently, was the editor of Tips and Tricks magazine. A fine, it still is, excuse me, editor of Tips and Tricks.
Yeah.
Editor-in-chief again. Did you know that?
Damn you.
Oh. Yeah, there was a little turf war, I think, going on there. Which you can talk about.
That was ugly.
That was just a title.
And I'm not going to stand here for the whole show.
Share a microphone like Paul and George.
We're going to be fighting over this microphone.
I'm basically here to just say, that's right, Bill.
So, Bill, I think you had an idea for what we could talk about.
Well, it struck me as interesting that, Chris had kept this magazine alive and profitable for 13 years, and it only took me 9 months to destroy it. I mean, Dracula doesn't have a better touch than that. But I don't think it can probably really be laid entirely on my shoulders. And I think the real issue is there a place in this world today for print journalism in terms of game magazine coverage? I mean, EGM, you may have noticed, has stopped putting in the blow-in subscription cards, okay? That's called death by attrition. Ziff Davis would love to sell off the package, but nobody wants to buy the magazine end. Game Informer has basically adopted the old 1950s Life magazine paradigm of you stop people in the street and at gunpoint force them to take a free subscription to your magazine, and then you can say, we've got 1 million subscribers! But you have to wonder how long advertisers will even bother continuing to produce print ads for one magazine.
Yeah, it's crazy because it doesn't, it just doesn't work out for them anymore. The numbers, if you go and actually look at an issue of EGM now and count up the number of pages that are devoted to ads from video game companies advertising video games, it's really very, very small. They're not buying the back cover anymore. You see stuff from the U.S. Army and tag body spray, but you don't actually see video game companies bursting ads.
Back in 1981, when we were doing the original Electronic Games, we were looking at 1 page of advertising to 1 page of content.
Right.
I think in this final 150th issue of Tips and Tricks, there probably were about 8 to 9 pages big.
Yeah, no more than that. That's right, Bill.
Good one. So really, again, the question is, we've now got this bifurcated system of journalism where there are online journalists and there are print journalists. And it can be real funny at press events, when all of a sudden they stand up and say, you online people, get out of here. And the rest of you sign non-disclosures and embargoes now, or you do not see anything. I mean, I come from the day when a new system came out, they sent you 4 of them, and you distributed among the staff. Now you get 1 week delivered at gunpoint, literally, got the guy's arm. When a new game comes out, he comes up there with a key, he unlocks the machine, puts the game in, closes it up, and locks it up again. Okay, that's how afraid they are of information about these games getting out in advance. I mean, I believe it's gone beyond the point of even, films. I don't think George Lucas protected his secrets better than the game industry has. And so it's become this weird world where, you've got game sites, not to name one, but like Kotaku, for example, they will print anything. I mean, they'll pick something up off somebody's blog, and they won't even call to confirm, see if, the person he's talking about, has the same opinion. They don't go to that level of journalism, but nonetheless, that instant journalism has kind of taken over the field. And at least that's my thesis to explain my failure to revive the magazine.
Right. I mean, that's something that we've had to deal with at Wired because obviously we look towards blogs as being sort of the next big step in news. And it's just trying to ride that very fine line between making sure the medium is not the message, that we're using the tool for fast reporting. And it does cast a wider net into things like, guy bakes a cake that looks like a weed. And I mean, well, that's a news story. It wouldn't have gone on the front page. You wouldn't have assigned an editor to it, But we can blog about it in 15 minutes, and then just sort of throw it out there and see what people respond to. But at the same time, it really does pose these, even if you start with the assumption of, we are going to be journalistically responsible, and we're going to make sure that, what we print is fact, and we go back to the source. Even if you're totally dedicated to that idea, just the fact that you have to produce so much content in such a short span of time means that you're constantly struggling with it every day.
I think it also gets harder to, look at the big picture. Day by day, a magazine like Tips and Tricks making tons of money for 10 years, just doing great. And all of a sudden, they start calling and telling you, we're dropping sales. You're doing something wrong. The assumption's got to be you're doing something wrong. Not that maybe things have evolved to the point where people would rather wade through 20 amateurishly written walkthroughs on GameFAQs.com than they would, spending, how much was it? $5.99. That's very expensive. But rather than spending the money to have the magazine in front of them and have pictures and guides to look through. So, one of the things we were working on, in fact, when they showed us one, was a website that would have brought a lot of that content over to the web, and it was certainly considered up to the last minute that the magazine might eventually die and live on only in a web presence. And we see this everywhere. Again, we see it with Ziff Davis. If you're seeing it with Ziff Davis, you know that this is an industry-wide play. The magazine says, I can't believe Play magazine makes money.
I wouldn't know.
On their paper alone has got to cost more than they're making.
It's a gorgeous magazine, yeah.
Absolutely, but there's no way that they're breaking, no way they're coming close to breaking even. If EGM can't break even, if Game Informer has to go to a paradigm of, forcing them into people's bookshelf while they're asleep, when Nintendo Power has to start drinking deals with outside people, but they ever said that?
Yeah, they haven't announced who's going to be doing it.
No, but Nintendo Power is licensing the magazine out to
This is Nintendo with a magazine that inexplicably has the respect of readers.
Right.
It's being on that. Who can give you a fairer? Have I ever lied to you before? Have I ever steered you wrong? This is a terrible Nintendo game.
I see the review of Mario Strikers. Nintendo Power, I'm never going to give it.
The power that gave Nintendo. You'd think even as a break even, it would have been worth to them.
Right, but it shows you even that model. Even
Exactly,
that model
doesn't work
magazine
anymore.
as advertising people does not, they're reaching people in different ways and they don't need that old model of sending out a print magazine. Even that doesn't work.
Well,
it really,
let's ask the audience, how many folks in this room subscribe to a game magazine?
it's sort of a self-selected sample.
And even so, it's not anything close to a majority.
Yeah, that's right.
And, I think, that, you go back, we were selling 300,000 copies of electronic games in '83, and we had about 7 or 8 competitors out there, all of whom were also breaking even. Clearly, people are no longer looking to magazines for their information. They can go, they can get it online for free. And, much as I'm from, I like something I can take and get a bathroom with. To be honest. But, today, they take their iPhone into the bathroom with them, and they can read it online. So, I do wonder if in 3 years even, if there will be any significant game magazine trend out there. And I must say, the best idea I heard up there, the entire time I was up there, Lisa Beatty, our art director, brilliant art director, gave it to me. She said, they should print this magazine in Spanish. And at that time, they weren't ready to listen to anything, you know, I mean, but a Spanish language edition of this magazine, I believe, would have kept it in business. And I think somebody's going to smarten up and realize that that is an incredible market. I mean, a Spanish language video game magazine will sell. You know, I don't have the money to put up and back up what I'm saying, but I honestly believe that. But, you know, beyond that, you do have to wonder if the mainstream just simply no longer looks to magazines, no longer depends upon magazines. You know, Wired is in a slightly different position, obviously.
Yeah.
You're covering a much broader campus.
Right, and I mean, you have an audience who is looking for higher quality stuff. I mean, when you're talking about magazine articles, you're talking about something that has gone through, I mean, literally, a news article that I write, at the most, we spend like, it's a huge feature a week, you know, like polishing it up. For the magazine, we're talking about like a 3-month lead time. You have all these great people who have their hands in it, and it's a much, much, much better story to read through. And certainly you can do that with print video game magazines, but the question is, A, you have the talent, and you know, you have guys who can do that. B, is the audience out there? You know, are there actually people out there who are willing to pay a premium for better written content about video games? And the answer is looking like no right now.
Yeah, well, we would spend what percentage of our time, Chris, looking at just the top piece of the cover?
Yeah, we would spend probably 2 or 3 days just working on the cover itself.
Because you know, they were convinced it was going behind other magazines, and that all anybody was seeing was this up here. So we probably spent 5 times as much time on the top quarter of the page.
But that's partially also because LFP is an old school magazine publisher, and you know, they know newsstand, they know, you know, traditional magazine distribution. They don't know that much about how the content impacts the sales.
Yeah, and which was another, well, I mean, they were publishing, what, 24 magazines, say 10 years ago? 10
Yeah, 20 or 30.
And what are they down to now? 5?
Well, it's less than 10. They only have one non-adult magazine.
Yeah, Aqua, which is also good.
I tell you, Joe told me a story yesterday that just broke my heart. When Joe Santulli opened his video game store in New Jersey, because of the fact that he used to do our collector's closet column, I thought, you know, we have to have a presence in that store. So every month, our editorial assistant would put together a big stack of Tips and Tricks magazines and send them to him, so that he could, you know, just make a few bucks off them and display them prominently in the store. And I saw pictures of the place with Tips and Tricks on a rack when we first walked in the door. And I would ask him every once in a while, what issues sold well? I really want to get some feedback from him, because this is a place where hardcore video gamers go. And he never really said too much until yesterday. He said, you know, I actually discounted the magazine. He said he was only charging like $2 or $3 for it, and they would just sit there. And I thought, you know, if people who go to that store don't even want to buy Tips and Tricks, then I'm not surprised that.
You're right, Chris.
That's right, Bill.
And I don't want, you know, we're kind of getting down a little bit on Tips and Tricks, and I certainly want to state from an outsider's perspective that it was really just a wonderful magazine. I enjoyed it. It was also, really, what you guys did as far as like reviewing fanzines back in the day.
Yeah, we did yours.
Really helped me out. Seriously, because they wrote, oh man, I don't know if it was you who wrote it or you know, somebody got this old issue, or you know, this issue of this fanzine that I had done when I was in high school, and called it like, you know, some of the best stuff we've read in any fan or professional magazine. And I mean, that just, you know, orders came in by the well, tens, but you know. But it was people who I wanted to read it, you know, and it was people who would give me freelance work after that. And so Tips and Tricks was great, and I'm really, really sad to see it go.
Well, we tried to do the kind of things that, you know, first of all, we tried to do things that were not, you know, press releases and information that you would see in any of the other magazines. But we also tried to, I don't really know how to say this, but people think of Tips and Tricks as a source of information, and they think that that information can be had online for free. Therefore, the magazine is useless to me. But, you know, we thought of it as a package with a function. And, you know, for example, the strategy guides, you know, that's something that you'd want to have in print on the couch next to you when you're playing the game, instead of printing it out on your printer or, you know, having to have your computer on while you're playing the game. Things like the pencil puzzles and some of the
Which you invented.
some of the, you know, lifestyle columns. You know, we were trying to do stuff that you can't get online, and that there's a reason for it to be in print as opposed to online.
I mean, we were covering things, I mean, we were really going to places that none of the other magazines were touching. Game schools, you know, careers in gaming, professional gaming, you know, areas that I wasn't seeing covered in any of the other magazines. And yet, it was just impossible to break through. It was like people weren't seeing the magazine on the news.
Well, that's another part of it. I mean, I'm still naive enough to think that there's a market out there for a magazine like Tips and Tricks.
Yeah.
But the company that was publishing it didn't really believe in marketing it. Their philosophy was you reach it on the newsstand and hope that people see it there.
Right.
And I kept telling them, you need to be doing something to drive people to the newsstand to look for it. If that's all you're going to do is a print magazine, you know, you got to tell people that it exists.
And you make a big change in it at the same time.
And when you do something new, I mean, you have to have so much more marketing muscle behind it than just doing the same old thing.
Yeah.
Because people need to get that message. And so if the company is behind you, you know, 110% getting that out and staying with you guys for longer than like 9 months, you know, with this new concept, it was never going to happen.
What's really funny though is that, you know, when they brought Bill in, it was kind of like the writing on the wall. I mean, I thought, well, you know, you know, if they don't trust me to do it myself anymore, it must not be doing well. But really, actually, at the end, they finally started to realize that it wasn't our fault that the magazine was.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they looked at all
They
the
would
other
look at it and
magazines.
say, this
Say,
is
you know,
a beautiful magazine.
It took them a number of years to get to that point.
Yeah.
But they finally realized, you know, we know you guys are doing everything you can with the resources we give you and the talent that you have, but they, you know, they just weren't willing to spend the money to spread the word about it.
And
In fact, when the magazine was killed, the most common comment I saw on the message boards was, "Are they still around? I didn't even know it still existed."
Yeah, or I go to GameFAQs.
Yeah.
You know, and our idea was, you know, if we get it online, I mean, you know, who wants to wade through 25 amateurishly written, unedited, untested game walkthroughs when you can get one that's beautiful with pictures and all that other stuff? I mean, it seemed like a natural thing, but you know, when you're working in a magazine company where basically one person can sit down and say that's it. You know, when he loses faith, and he kept faith, but when, you know, I mean, I went in as a consultant originally, and he said I could get a million for it. I said, take it.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to those
And I
people
thought it
who
would
were on.
let's pass over to a publisher who would try to resurrect it and save it. But no, he didn't want to give it up, and then it was like he gave it 9 months, and it hadn't turned around, and that was it. So what was one guy saying, you know, that's it, it's over.
Yeah.
Shut down the website, shut down everything, it's all gone. Should we take some questions, James?
Yeah, if you have any questions. You're the cameraman.
I was wondering if you possibly factored into the, you know, sort of decline of print magazine, sort of the text message speak that, especially in the English articles. I mean, you know, we might imitate it, you know, just for fun on an online forum or something. But you think the fact that, you know, there are studies saying that kids' mastery of the English language is being destroyed by, you know, 3-letter abbreviations of 5-syllable words. Does that factor into it all, do you think?
Well, in terms of communication, I think one of the advantages that you have in a magazine as opposed to a website is you're going to get a quick blast of information. And I mean, Wired magazine would give, you know, a 25-page interview with somebody if they've got somebody who can give you one, just like Playboy will. You know, if you've got somebody who's worth reading for that many pages, you know. And magazines are about going in depth. And, you know, we're living in a world where disease isn't real until you can give it 3 initials. You know, restless leg syndrome, I don't want to know what that, IRLS. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, so we do, we live in have you seen the commercial where the kid's talking to her mother and about the amount of time she's spending on the phone,
Right.
she's talking entirely in abbreviation. You know, this is another language that's evolving.
Yeah.
It's almost like feeling like you don't speak the same language as the people you're communicating with. These kids are texting all day. I've never texted in my life.
It's not a good time to start, but actually, I The idea of, not even so much the language itself, but the idea that people are consuming media differently right now really does factor into it a lot, that people want to, pick and choose, spend a couple of seconds on this website and a couple of seconds on this one, and just jump back and forth and get information really, really quickly, have, 5 windows open at once or whatever, to be browsing forward or linking, all kinds of different things. The magazine doesn't give you that. There are no hyperlinks in a magazine. You're pretty much going from start to finish. You cannot yet read the internet of the toilet. I guess you can, but I think that could be print saving grace. They should just
My iPhone.
call it.
My iPhone.
Okay, print officially dead. Yeah.
One of the only things that we really could do to counter that was to have more pictures, less text. And that was kind of the philosophy that even the higher ups of the company were pushing on us late in the day. And it's,
When you're giving out information, that can also make things difficult.
yeah, when we first started Tips and Tricks, our philosophy was to make it like those crazy Japanese magazines that come out once a week. And they're just so packed with microscopic information that you can't help but, put down the money to buy it because it's so bursting at the seams with stuff. And when you do bigger pictures and less text, you get a nicer looking magazine. But you're getting less strategy guides, you're getting less information. And I agreed with it because some of the things that we wanted to show were more important than what we wanted to say. And we knew that people don't like to read, so we thought with something like Collector's Closet, I started to really shift over to something where I was just showing pictures of stuff and having little descriptions of them as opposed to just paragraphs and paragraphs of text describing why this is interesting. But in terms of the language, we had arguments just a month before about video.
Is video games one word or two?
Yeah.
How many say it's one word? How many say it's 2 words?
Yeah. Video game style guide that a couple of guys put out. They say it's one word.
That's why we decided not to use it. As a matter of fact, you know what the old argument came from NDA, who pointed out that if you do a Google search, with it as one word, you get a really crappy bunch of listings. Whereas if you list it as 2 words, you get lots and lots and lots of, even
more relevant
even from the sites that listed as one word, they get in there too. So that was good enough for
The
me.
Next Generation magazine always had it as one word, but I think all the others.
Well, in the first magazine, Electronic Gaming, we had ran it as one word.
Yeah.
And I had always written it that way my entire life.
Right.
Well,
Video games.
Tips and Tricks started out as Video Games and Computer Entertainment, and then became a magazine called Video Games, one word. But
But in both of those magazines, video games was always written as 2 words.
yeah, it within the magazine itself.
More questions?
I got one. Thanks for being the new editor-in-chief, Bill, and Tips and Tricks magazine. In the last issue of Tips and Tricks magazine, where did the Collector's Closet go to?
Yeah, a lot of people, people accused me of like whacking it in the last issue.
You know what? I'll tell you what happened. Charlotte, our senior editor, or executive editor, she had gone to Japan and done all these interviews with Japanese developers and stuff. She had a lot of content she wanted to get into that August issue. My son was graduating from high school, so I took a week's vacation during that issue. Our art director had a death in the family, so while she was out, I was doing layouts instead of writing my columns. And I thought, it won't really be a big deal if I don't do Collector's Closet this month because I'll just do it next month. Because I didn't know it was going to be the last issue.
Who knows?
So it was just an unfortunate, it wasn't an intentional omission. It was just a sequence of events that got it left out.
The idea that the 150th issue was the last issue.
Yeah, it's a nice round number.
Chance, one of our more foolhardy freelancers blogged that there was this secret conspiracy going on, by the way, because any of you read about this, Kotaku picked it up, which is no very so currently involved with it. And he basically says, this is all a conspiracy, they were going to fire the entire staff while they were at E3. And in the first place, it's my understanding that if you own a magazine, you can fire people anytime you want. You don't really need to set a conspiracy to it. I had actually suggested that if you're shutting it down any day now, please do it before E3 rather than after E3, because at least this way the staff gets a chance to go in and maybe get another job. And they can go in networking, not thinking they're collecting information for a magazine that's dead. So, but again, this got picked up. But it just happened to end on the 150th issue. None of it was planned, but I guess it's somehow.
Well, somebody planned it.
Well, yeah, though it happened so quickly. I mean, I don't think they ever really considered it was going to be the 150th issue or,
Well, I remember telling you, this is our 150th issue, so you should say something in the editorial about it.
Yeah.
And then you didn't.
Well,
And I thought it was about how great our website was.
oh, right, the website they immediately took down, yes.
Kind of. Anyway, I wish we could have had like a farewell message in there or something.
Yeah, I mean, we had this, this was already in printers, when they decided this was happening, so.
Oh, I had to tell them something that probably nobody knows. Before they decided to kill the magazine, they actually, they wanted to change to a bi-monthly format where
Yes.
August was going to be the last monthly issue, and we knew this several months ago. September was going to be one of the code book special issues. October would be tips and tricks. November would be a code book. So we were all preparing for that change, and I thought it would actually be easier and healthier because the code books always sell.
The code books, for some reason, I don't know if anyone can explain this.
Yeah, I
that the code books made money. These, entire magazines filled with the cheat codes,
Alter the source code.
Yeah, and well, he's a master.
The fact that those made more money
Yeah.
than the monthly magazine, which we put 10 times the effort into.
Oh,
right.
So they finally said, this is a better business model.
Right.
We'll make more money on the code books, and the code books are more expensive on the newsstand too.
Yeah.
Which is the real unbelievable
It's
thing.
totally inexplicable to me. I mean, I wasn't able to understand it as a consultant. I wasn't able to understand it as the editor-in-chief. But
And I'm still going to be doing the code books bi-monthly
Yes.
as a freelancer. So if you're interested in that
What
stuff.
about
Mark,
Mark?
go for that. Go ahead, go ahead.
What I like about tips and tricks was like the collector's closet, the little coins from the arcades, the eBay auctions, the other stuff that wasn't tips and tricks. When I play a game, I just play it. I don't look anything up usually. But I like all that stuff, and like Chris' arcade article and all that. That's the stuff I like to make it work. I wonder if the audience for that type of material is so different from the audience that looks for tips and tricks that maybe the reason the code book sold was because that's what it was. In the magazine, maybe someone looking for the content that I'm talking about didn't commit to it because they didn't care about the tips and tricks.
No, I think there was some sense of resistance by the younger readers who felt they weren't, they felt they weren't getting enough of the strategy guides and the cheat codes, and whereas the older readers weren't giving us a chance because they still considered. I mean, the January issue this year was the first issue that we had an email address in. So, our letters tended to come from young kids, handwritten on, blue notebook paper.
And comics.
Do you think there's
Yeah.
Do you think there's a big enough market for a magazine that's just all the content like I mentioned?
That just the lifestyle content?
Reviews, lifestyle content, just fun stuff like that, retro and current, just sort of a general video game magazine.
I'd like to think so.
I mean, there's
I
really
mean,
not one. Europe has retro gamer. If there was an American version.
Well, it's so much easier to get magazines on the shelves in Europe because,
Yes.
you're talking about smaller countries and, it's easier to distribute them. You can do them even like weekly, bi-weekly if you really want to. Just because you can print up fewer copies and get them on fewer newsstands. When you're doing an American magazine, you're just getting it all out over the country. It's huge undertaking.
Yeah. And there was a lot of discussion about changing the title of the magazine, but we didn't want to give that up. We didn't want to give up the readership that we had, so it was this tightrope walk to, include enough lifestyle material in there that you could be satisfied reading that, and yet you still wouldn't feel like, I just want the cheat codes, I just want the strategy guides, and, they're filling up the pages with stuff on game schools, So, yeah, obviously it didn't work, so it is perhaps possible that those two audiences were not simpatico.
I personally think that when you're talking about video game magazines, you're talking about somebody who has to be passionate enough about video games to want to buy a magazine and read about them, as opposed to taking that $5 or $6 and putting it toward the purchase of a new game. And I frankly, kids are much more enthusiastic about video games than adults are, because adults have cars and girlfriends and boyfriends and responsibility, and they just don't have that same level of excitement, or they just can't wait to read the new issue of whatever magazine.
Do you guys think that, I mean, we don't have a Rolling Stone magazine in our industry or anything near equivalent to that. Maybe Edge in Europe has some kind of label like that. But we don't do very much in our industry to promote the people who make games. We don't go out and try to, except for events like CGE and other conventions, there's not a forum or a platform for them to become famous, so to speak. I mean, there's Cliffy B or Tommy Colorico who've invented themselves. But we don't really feature those guys in any of our magazines, or it's rare. So do you think there's a place for that, or how is that going to evolve? Because the movie and music industries have a lot of these kinds of magazines. We don't have that, and I think, I'm in my 30s, you guys are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, and we're still playing games, and our industry is getting older, and I'm not as interested in reading these games as I was when I was 15. So, and the content that's online is great, but I'm still looking for that same magazine this guy over here is.
Well, one of the problems obviously with this industry is it doesn't have stars. I mean, every other form of the entertainment industry has stars. I mean, when was the last time you saw a game that had on the box by the creators of and listed another game? I mean, the fact is this is a very paranoid industry. It's been paranoid since 1978 when I got into it. I mean, you could go to E3s and CESs, and if you were from another company, you wouldn't be allowed into like the EA booth or wherever, and the names of, I mean, it's ironic that the two companies that made their bones by putting the names of the creators out there, Activision and Electronic Arts, are, of course, today the two companies that do the most magnificent job of keeping their talent hidden.
Right. I think the answer to these questions about, whether or not there's a market for this, or there's ever going to be a market for this, is, yeah, eventually. I mean, the industry is still just so immature in that sense that we haven't really gotten out of this. And I like the term paranoia. I mean, that is really it. People are realizing, I mean, okay, Nintendo, starting in like 1996, 1997, when Mario 64 came out, embarked on this like essentially PR mission. We are going to make Shigeru Miyamoto, we're going to make him into Shigeru Miyamoto, the world's most famous video game designer, and really, really, really hype this guy up, which before that time, they had not done. Certain people knew who he was, but he could go on the E3 show floor and walk around because they weren't using him in that way. And other video game companies are finally starting to come around to the sense of, we can do that. We can actually take our people and we can make them into stars like that. And you start to see people doing that. The problem is, and I'll illustrate this with a specific one that's happened. 2K was taking around the director of BioShock, who done the System Shock games, right? And so they kind of pitched this to people and said, okay, hey, we've got this guy. He's famous, as being the developer of these games in the past, and now he's doing this brand new game just for us. So we're taking him around press tour, and that all sounded really great until they eventually then said, once they brought him by, because Ziff was we're going to do a Retronauts, based on the older games. They were like, oh, well, you can't discuss any games that were produced for different publishers.
Yeah.
You can only discuss games that were done for our publisher, because it's just that one.
The game publishers very desperately want to control the flow of information out of their companies.
Right.
And they discouraged us from talking directly to the developers because they knew that we would send them a box of Hustler magazines and say, hey, send us the check codes.
Right. But can you imagine anybody taking, if you were a new record label and you just signed, whatever, you just signed the Killers or whatever, and you come around and you said, oh, we can't talk about the game. in the past. You can't pretend that it didn't happen. You can only talk about this one product. It doesn't make any sense to not have an artist not be able to discuss prior art.
Yeah.
But they just don't get that yet. They don't realize it.
No, they don't. And again, because they haven't broken through that wall of if they knew who it is, you know. And so what they're willing to advertise for teams, you know, kind of like a band.
Right.
But they just don't want you to know who plays bass and who plays lead guitar and what the name of that lead singer is who's really standing out.
Yeah, that can backfire on them too. Because
Yeah.
you have a company like Rare where all of the important people have basically left over the years.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, they
It's
still
still
want
full of
you.
Rare,
They
it's the
still want you.
drifters, you know, they're all dead, but the drifters are still playing somewhere here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Where you look at people like, I mean, how long does it take big name video, and you know, it is, the video game industry's kind of practice is coming back to bite you in the ass of how you treat your employees, because how long does it take video game designers these days from the minute that they get name recognition for a huge project to like the day that they quit and start their own development studio? Seeing so much of that in Japan. Japanese game developers are just saying like, you know what, we're not going to take this like low-ass salaries anymore. We're just going to quit and start our own company and work fewer hours for way more money and much more recognition. And David Jaffe just you know, left Sony. He's still doing games for Sony, but he left and he quit and he started his own studio. Within how many years after God of War came out? 2003, 2004.
After GoldenEye and Perfect Dark came out, there were guys who had shot like 10 minutes of video. And they were, I'm part of the Perfect Dark team, you know, and they were starting their own companies. And, you know, when you get their press kit, that would be their big, you know, I was, you know, assistant, guy who held the microphone, you know, while they were doing the cut. And because the name Perfect Dark was associated with it. I mean, it seems to me, you know, if you want to be marketed, if you want to be known in this industry, you've got to do what Cliffy B and Connie Tallarico and those people have done. You have got to go out there and market yourself. You have got to introduce yourself to the press, find the press, and make sure they cover you. I got a chance to do an interview with the man who designed Space Invaders, okay, Takashida-san. And he doesn't speak English, so we had Anatole Brown on our staff who was born in Japan and speaks fluent Japanese. And, you know, the ability to talk to this man, whose name I hadn't even known, probably maybe one of the most influential men in my life. You know, Space Invaders was the game that appeared on the first cover of Electronic Games. And, you know, it was finally a chance, you know, 30 years later to actually talk to him. It was quite amazing, but and again, you have that whole thing where somebody can game Japanese and somebody goes to go, somebody can speak English. So, you know, imagine if half of the rock and roll that we listen to were produced by a band from, you know, Russia, you know, and none of them spoke English. It'd be very hard to promote. Even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
The industry chose no when they
I mean, you do see people, I mean, really trying to get their stars out there, but they do it in kind of hand-handed ways sometimes. Yeah, oh, sorry, any more questions?
This phenomenon you were talking earlier about how people are going more into the electronic format. Do you think it's limited to gaming magazines, or do you think it's going to spread to all magazines?
Yeah, I mean, the problems with printing gaming magazines are just, again, pretty much everything.
Us aren't doing that much better, you know. I mean, I gather they held a focus group. They're going to open up a Hustler casino hotel out here in Las Vegas. I don't know if you're supposed to know that or not, but I'm going to have you sign it.
I didn't know.
Crap. They had always been, you know, in the golden demo, there were couples between the ages of like 24 and 34. And so how many of you think are excited about the idea of a hotel casino, called the Hustler Hotel Casino in Las Vegas? And everybody's saying, everybody knows, fantastic idea. About 4 questions down. By the way, how many of you folks read Hustler? Not a hand goes up in the entire room. And this is like, you know, this is not like 5 people, this is like 50 people, and not a hand goes up. So, you know, and I mean, I never thought I'd reach the point in my life where I have to send somebody an email saying, stop sending me porn. I have enough. I'm going to go out and buy a magazine at this point,
Right,
you know?
right.
But I think you will see, it's probably more of a problem for the gaming magazines earlier than it is for other industries, because obviously these are tech savvy people. Certainly a PC games magazine, all of their readers own PCs. and they have the ability to get that information online by default.
Of course, they go to land cafes and just enter in their, you know, their password, if they're online. I mean, you know, you kids sneaking with your mom and dad, you know, and God, everything they're making these days hooks up to the internet.
Yeah, but all print is hurt. Newspapers are hurt.
Oh, absolutely. And in the magazine, racks, you see it.
So where do you think, like a reader itself who likes quality writing, I mean, you're obviously not getting it online anymore, because you got all these new people writing. When these print magazines go away, where will we like to go for quality writing then?
I think that you'll get it online just because the increased competition there is going to make people realize that they can't just, you know, hire an army in high school or churn out writing $25,000 a year. So it'll always be out there. I mean, then you really worry, I mean, how much real quality, you know, writing has video game journalism turned out in the past, you know, 4 decades?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
There's not a lot.
Yeah. Present company accepted, I mean, yeah.
There's not a lot of good people out there who have the, you know, mastery of the English language,
Right.
knowledge of the history of the industry,
And the game jobs.
ability to play the game.
Yeah, and nobody wants to pay for it.
No.
I mean, there's people out there who get pretty good gigs, but they're in a tiny minority.
Well, I think the industry to a certain extent, especially at the print end where they are financially hurting so badly, are kind of in the same position where the comic books were at in the late 70s when I was working for comics. A company called Charlton, which was like the number 4 company in the 3-company market, decided, you know, hey, these kids come in every day and they're willing to do this work for nothing. Why are we paying these people? And we've got a similar industry where we've got kids out there who will go in and be beta testers and do all this stuff for nothing. Because, you know, we've got kids who will do it for free. But of course what happened was the comic book sales, as bad as they were, dropped due to nothing because they were kids coming off the street. And there will always be a difference between the kids coming in off the street who love to play games. I mean, I was at a meet and greet for Tommy Tallarico's Video Games Live concert at the Hollywood Bowl last year. And, you know, these kids would keep coming up and saying, you know, I want to be a game journalist. What should I do? And I said, study journalism. You know, you've got 1,000 people online here with you who all know games and love games. That is not enough. We have very few game journalists who are actually have training in journalism, who went to the University of Missouri or who went to, you know, to some top-notch journalism school. So as a result, this is, you know, this is a field that was invented by people who really didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Right.
So, you know, journalism has never been a big factor. And it's always been so easy to get kids in and have them sit down and tell them you're going to play games all day, and then you're going to write a paragraph about it. And you and your 5 friends are each going to write what you think about this game after playing it for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you get. You get what you pay for, you get crap, you know?
But then, I mean, then again, you know, I was writing articles about video games, you know, for myself, and, you know, again, those dozens of people, essentially, since I was like 13, 14, and when you have that spare time and that passion, and that, like, extra 6 hours a day that you don't know what to do with, you know, that's the time to funnel all that into this. And then by the time, you know, that you are actually going to be looking for a job, well, you've already got, you know, 6, 7 years of experience in working for peanuts, but when you have the time and the energy, that's the time to do it. And I would tell those kids, if they're coming up asking you, be like, start writing about video games.
Yeah, I think that, you know, again, I don't know if game magazines will die. I find it hard to believe that there won't be a game magazine out there, or a couple of game magazines out there for at least another 10 years. I may be overly optimistic, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of them. And I think they're going to have to be very good. I think they're going to have to be written, you know, at the level of Wired, but, you know, just covering games and be sophisticated. I mean, and yet, you know, Next Generation came pretty close to giving us that magazine, and it did not succeed.
Right.
So, and that was at a point where people were still buying magazines. So, you know, the ability to hold something in your hand is still a virtue. You know, I mean, we live in so much of our lives and lived in a virtual world that it is nice every once in a while to pick something up in your hand and be able to look through it and not have to scroll. So, and you know, again, if we're brought up reading magazines, I think there's something that will keep, but clearly, you know, it's a technology that is moving into the past.
Right. I mean, there's always been a certain weight, a certain, you know, gravity essentially to print magazines, right? I mean, because they are that much more permanent, and the stuff in them seems or seemed, I guess, to mean more. But then I mean, it's getting to the point now where it's no longer really, that's no longer the case. People are just so used to online media and just getting their information in different ways that it no longer has that pull.
What are you looking for? You know, are you looking for thoughtful analysis of the games, or are you just looking to see, you know, how the graphics?
Right, yeah, I mean, they're looking for, well, the joke at Electronic Gaming Monthly is that they should just rename the magazine to scores and screenshots based on what the majority of their readers are looking for to get out of the magazine.
And the reviews are sucks rules. Okay, this game sucks, this game rules. Okay, that's it. We're one or the other, and then that's what we want to know. And if people do get to that point,
Right.
magazines will go away.
Yeah, but that's what it's like now, and I really do think that in the future, yes, you know, opportunities are going to open up, and that, you know, at some point there will be a market for this kind of stuff, because you kind of keep going thought that, you know, eventually must be able to, yeah.
Any other questions? Bullshit for a while.
I think we did. Great job.
It's a gift.
Just getting back to your point, how do companies like Rating Games and Green Guys, how do they do, like, are they pushing numbers at all?
I'm sure they do great.
They did better
I can feel
a
that.
couple years ago.
I
Very,
Do
very.
you think that they put a potential leadership or something?
No.
Oh, sure.
I don't think so.
They put the point of purchase with the game usually. So
Yeah, and they can have all the strategies on day one instead of like waiting for the game facts kids to play through the games and get it all up there.
Yeah, I think that, I worked for Creamer in the mid-90s, okay, when they were coining money. And the reason they were coining money was because the game publishers had no idea that this information had any value. So they were virtually giving it away. And, I mean, they were maybe making like 5% royalties, and they considered that was total gravy, okay? And then all of a sudden, these books started selling, and they got a look at how much Creamer was taking in, and all of a sudden, that percentage started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if it was a licensed book, I know we did Maximum Carnage on the Super Nintendo, plus the Spider-Man game, and that game was like, I think they won like 15% by the time they get to dealing with Marvel and dealing with Acclaim. And even then, the developers wouldn't tell us anything. Because like, what are we getting out of it? So the developers were not making any money at all off this, so they were getting no cooperation. I mean, you know, the claim could say, give them the information, and what they did was they sent us a speeded up version of the game. So we'd say, you know, all these certain things are really difficult, you're gonna have to, and then of course we get the game and it's half speed. And it was like the easiest thing in the world, we just jumped over it, you know? So they really started feeling resentful toward these companies, and now, you know, you see a lot more unofficial guides than you used to. You know, they're
Really?
Oh yeah, the unofficial. Why pay the money for the license? You know, I mean, you know, I mean, when we were doing the Final Fantasy book, they just buy
Oh,
the
yeah.
Japanese book and have somebody translate it for us.
Right.
You know?
I was under the impression that the shift was the opposite way, that they weren't really doing a lot of unofficial guidebooks anymore.
You know, it's not a section of the bookstore that I really tend to go near, but I know the last ones I did for Brady were all, you know, actually I did one for Acclaim, but I'm just going to start their own division, and it was Raw. It was a
Oh, okay.
wrestling game. That was, I think, the last one I did, but I did like 3 books for Brady, which they then published as pieces of like other collections.
Oh, okay.
So I think they publish a lot of the stuff 3 and 4 times
Right.
in order to amortize it and get their money back. But I can't believe that people are that those companies are doing nearly as well as they were doing 10 years ago. I don't think it's even, they're making 50% of what they were making. Again, they're competing. They had the same problem we did. You know, why don't I just go up to GameFAQs, or why don't I just go up to one of the game sites and get this information?
Yeah, they've definitely started to do more.
Yeah, the DVD mentality. the making of the game, you
The
know, here are
deluxe
the
strategy,
character
yeah.
design sketches and stuff like that.
Yeah, we would try to tell you everything you need to know within 6 pages. But, they have the luxury of having paid for the license, they have the support of the publisher and all the official stuff. They would do posters, soundtrack discs, I think that's a good way to go because it's more enticing. When you're buying the game, there are people who buy the game and the strategy guide at the same time, and there are stores that package them together, for a certain price. And we always saw them as competition because, of course, we weren't paying anybody for the right to see the game before it was published. So, we had to rely on our guys' ability to lead the game to talk about it.
I honestly believe that those books are going to disappear and be replaced by DVD because it's so much easier to show you how to play the game than it is to tell you. I mean, there's nothing more awkward than, go up to the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Now scroll up 2 3/4 screens and move 4 inches to the right if you have a 20-inch television. And from that spot, if you press ZZBB, left, right, up, down, it's just so awkward. Whereas if you can do it in a video on a DVD, you can get there. The testers are playing it anyway. It's being, you can view the recorders just as easily. Why not let them see what you're doing? Freeze frame if you need to, and say, okay, here are the controls we just pressed. To me, that's 10 years I was telling them, why do you at least not including a DVD in with these books? Because I don't think people want to read 300 pages. I mean, that again, I think that's from reading.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's a timing issue because they're not going to show on a DVD anything that's not a finished game.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's really, consider the amount of effort that would have to go into something like that. You'd be using your early version of the game.
Well,
Even
right.
the books they're using,
I think the companies themselves would be into it.
Right. But even then, they might not even have access. The game's not done yet.
Yeah.
They can't. Yeah. On that kind of weird note. Is there any more questions? There are not.
You can all leave then.
Yeah.
Or stick around and talk.
Yeah, you can hang out. The CGE panel is going to start. 30. Let's see if I'm right about
I
that.
think that's like about 3 minutes.
Yep. And copies of Bill's book, which is really, really great. I mean, seriously, there are stories in there.